Hello, everyone. Good evening and welcome to our live SID live, which means Siblings in Design. And today we have with us two of our beautiful and wonderful guests, Kenan and Gulam. I hope I've pronounced your name correctly.
You have.
I'm one of those ones who's always teaching people how to pronounce names correctly. So just to do a quick and a very quick and brief intro about the people who are here today. Myself, I'm Ucheju Iziogu, and that's my brother, Okechukwu Iziogu, and we're both, well, as the name suggests, we're siblings in design. He is an architect. His business is called the Reinvent Design Studios, and we've worked together for the best part of 20 years. Designing both external and internal structure of people's homes. My business is called the Wellbeing Cognoscente, and I want to do justice to introduce our guests today, and I will start with Kenan. Kenan is a holistic neurodiverse coach and relationship whisperer. And she herself is a neurodivergent as well, and she connects intuitively with her clients, helping people identify and clear their environment. Basically, I will let her talk about herself. I just wanted to give a quick, brief intro of who Kenan is. And Gulam is she's our grief, well, I don't want to say grief. Let me just call it grief recovery specialist.
That's right.
That's what she does, but she's a lot more than that. And she specializes in equipping people to overcome unresolved grief in the short as possible time as 90 days, believe it or not, and helping you avoid, years of pain and therapy. So she's one who has suffered grief herself, and she's turned that around to help others avoid long-term distress. And so, getting all that out of the way, I'm just going to say one after another, let's all just sit down, take a deep breath, because this is going to be an enjoyable session. Life is already too difficult and too serious, but what we're trying to achieve today is to let our viewers and ourselves also come into a space where we know and recognize that your space and your mind are not different. They feed off each other, and it's a symbiotic relationship between your space and your mind. It's important for us to know that whatever we put out in the environment is what's feeding us, and what's feeding us is what we're putting out as well. So it's a vicious cycle depending on what you're putting out there. And I mean, as both of you and Okechukwu would attest, the beauty of the panel we have here today, we're not just people who are selling something or services, but we're actually users of the services that we promote with positive results. So Okechukwu is not going to provide an architectural solution that has not been tried and tested and used somewhere. And the years of experience also has allowed us to be able to come up with specifics that are personality centric to the individuals that we work with. So let's, I don't know. So, Okechukwu, let me start with you. Let's go from the outside in. And then we'll go from the inside out to close it all up. So let's just start with you. Give us like two seconds brief overview of how someone's mind engages with their space when they come into a structure. Oh, you're muted.
Okay. Good evening, everybody. Hi. First and foremost, everything starts with perception or something your mind tells you. You want to be in a space. It could be in your bedroom. It could be a house generally. When I say a house, it could be, some people want to be in a bedroom, others want to be in a house that has a living room, or in a dining, and a garage, and a kitchen, and all of that. We want to be in a hotel room, we want to be in the school, building, church, wherever it is, you want to be in a space. And that space, you have the things that you look forward to seeing. There's there's a feeling you want to get, and most of these feelings are um, involuntary. They're not feelings that you can itemize.
Yeah.
You just want to walk into the space, and you know, without even searching for it, you want to pull down the doorknob, you want to reach for the switch, you want to um, reach for the air conditioning, either heater or a cooler. You want to get a glass of water. Now, all of these processes, regardless of the space you're in, um, are processes that come natural to you. So you don't want to go into a space and not find these things. You reach for the doorknob and it's not there. You reach for the switch and it isn't where it's supposed to be. It could be probably lower than it ought to be or much higher. And you're reaching out for it and you can't find it. You're looking for your fridge or looking for your heater or cooler. These things come natural, just like you get into your car and you know where the Kickstarter is, you know where your gear shift is, you know where your brakes are. These things come natural to you. So design outside in. You also have an understanding or a wish that you want for your building to look like. You want to be able to drive home every day, longing to go through your driveway, get to your front door, get into your living room, get into your bedroom, use your stairs. Some people want hidden stairs, others want public stairs, open stairs that are ornamental and part of the interior design. So depending on what you want, you paint these pictures, and what we do is we ensure that the pictures you've painted in your head over the years are actually made possible physically for you to live in for as long as you want to until you decide to change your mind for something different. So, like I said at the start, it could be anything. It could be a bedroom, it could be a classroom, it could be a hotel room, it could be a church, it could be a filling station, a stadium, whatever it is, as long as it's used by human beings and will be used by you.
Yeah. That's awesome. That just sets the tone for where we're going, because a lot of the time most people think it has to do with the external. But and the minute you've got, you hear people saying things like, oh, I can't afford a designer right now because I really can't afford it. And then they're struggling. They're struggling with all these things and components that you've just mentioned, which are all part of what we do, what the how a home is supposed to serve you, not the other way around. A lot of us end up serving the thing that we paid money for instead of it serving us, because you're making do with what you have around you. Oh, well, that's just how it is. So I need a ladder and I need a stool and I needed this to get to that. When you could actually get it more organized in a way that it serves what your needs are today. Maybe when you built the house, you were a fit, 20 something, 30 something year old, and now you're in your 60s and you need a little bit of help to just getting off the chair. You need to think about it before you get off. Now that's not the time to climb ladders and get things out of cabinets. It's time to reorganize. So those are the little things. I'm gonna invite Kanan now to talk about, because she is also in my unit, where the organizers, Association of Professional Declutterers and Organizers here in London, and this is something we preach all the time about, when everything has a home, like you've just described. So it works also in structure. It's not just in where you put your cup at night to make it easy for you. It's also in where your switches are that makes it easy for you to reach it without having to think about it, too much. And it flows with your personality. Some people are right-sided, others are left-sided. All of these things come to play, and it has a lot to do with what Kenan is going to talk to us about. So just give us briefly an overview of what your neurodiverse and coach whispering techniques can bring to the table for someone to to understand the living concept of organized homes and spaces?
Okay, yeah, thanks, Ichiju. So my approach is that it's a completely holistic approach to support someone to heal and to basically create the vision of that life that they want to live. So all the different layers and different aspects of our lives, we can change them so that it supports us to move towards that dream, right? So whether it's going from the outside in our environment, by the buildings we live in, the way we organize the contents and the space, that's all important because that affects how much energy we're giving to ourselves so that we can, move forward with more motivation. But it also means that the people around us, so relationship whispering is really to help people to understand each other better. And the neurodivergent aspect is that neurodivergent people have brains which are wired differently to most people. So there can be a lot of confusion between neurotypical, most people's brain, most people with the average brain, and those that have got a different brain. And that dissonance causes a lot of energy to be wasted. So when we can help people understand each other, they can have more harmony in their life again. So that's, again, something that won't hold them back from living the life that they want. Because, we can spend a lot of time feeling frustrated, sad, angry, all these things that take energy away from us. So instead, we want to make it that we have supportive relationships and we don't have toxic relationships or like energy vampires, So that's the relationship aspect. And then, part of the work is also about going inwards and looking at the physical body as well, the health, the energy that we're putting inside ourselves, whether it's food, sleep, exercise. As we know, that's vital because we're in this physical body and we need to take care of that layer. But then also going even deeper, looking at our thoughts, our beliefs, and then even further deeper into, our hearts and our essence, what we're here to do, what our life purpose is. So all the different layers can be looked at, and rather than living unconsciously and without awareness, we can declutter all these layers. We can examine all of them, check if they're all supported in the right way. Are they in their optimum state? And if they're not, how can we change it and reorganize it? So very, similar to architecture, everything can be in the right place so that we operate at our best. Yeah.
That is perfect. That is just perfect. A lot of the things, what I discovered actually coming into one of a session with you was that there's that distance between understanding and acceptance. And the fact that when we don't know what it is that informs the way we are wired, or even aware of how we are wired, then there's a lot of wasted energy trying to conform into something that we're not. It's almost like expecting to squeeze an orange and the juice that comes out to be an apple juice. I mean, it's impossible, cannot happen. So what you do is, being diagnosed yourself helped you to accept that that's the reason why I can't fit in here. And so you don't waste the energy trying to fit in somewhere, but you're able to then identify and fit into your own tribe. And, speaking of this, knowing that a lot of the adult, how should I put it, trauma that we see displayed in adulthood, a lot of them stem from childhood unmet emotional needs. And these and traumas that were not dealt with, like Golam is about to tell us now, because I've also been fortunate. I feel so blessed, honestly, to have had a session, just a few minutes talking to Golam, and I was like, oh my goodness, are you serious? So I'm going to ask Golam, please just share with us, because we know exactly how the structure of a home can affect our minds depending on what we see. I mean, if you're driving home on a daily basis into an environment, and as you're approaching home, you get that feeling of elation of, I'm coming home. That is it's priceless, really, as opposed to when you're driving home and your blood pressure starts to go higher, like, oh my god, I wonder what's going to be when I open the door. So from the outside you're already in trepidation, whereas you can from the outside be at peace knowing that you've set it doesn't even mean that you have such a large budget. But tell us exactly what you think, going through trauma, going through grief, and how it connects with the mind so we can place it in our space. Because the whole idea and the concept is for holistic well being, which is the spirit, mind, and body. And it's important that everybody understands that one part suffering means the other parts will suffer eventually. So, can you give us your overview as well?
Yes, of course. So most people are not aware that there are over 40 life events that can leave you with feelings of loss and grief. And in the grief recovery method, we do define grief as the conflicted feelings that you get when something comes to an end or there's a change in a familiar pattern of behavior. And that's not just limited to people dying, that kind of bereavement, but actually any kind of big change that has an impact on you, leaves you with conflicted feelings, can really impact your emotions. And often when people are dealing with loss and grief, they can lose their sense of motivation, they can lose their sense of peace and productivity, struggle to focus, sometimes maybe wondering what the purpose of life is and feeling it's all pointless and empty. And when you're in that place, it's really hard to look outwards. Sometimes we can get very caught up with the internal conversations, the regrets, the feelings of sadness or guilt that are going on. And people have different levels of resilience to be able to cope. So some people might actually, imagine if you've got a backpack and every time there is a grief event, you just put it in there, you adjust yourself, and then you keep going. Well, you get to a point where you realize that grief is not only negative, it's accumulative. And so you might cope up to a certain point, and then it doesn't take very much to take you over the edge. And so that disconnect that can happen between your internal conversations and environment and what's actually happening around you can make it very difficult to manage your space, organize your space, take care of your space. And then as you look around and see your space becoming more and more of a mess, it then adds to your feelings of inadequacy and why can't I take care of things? Why am I so disorganized and so on? And often another side effect of unresolved grief can be that people find it really hard to function in making decisions. And obviously when you're decluttering or organizing, there are lots of decisions to be made. Do I keep this? Do I give it away? And so you can just feel overwhelmed. And sometimes it is to do with the way that we're wired or the way that we were brought up. I mean, for myself, I was born in a very small village in Pakistan. We didn't have a lot of stuff. So I never needed to learn how to categorize or this or organize. It's like you had very little. Life was, as it says behind you, Kanan, it was very simple. And then obviously part of growing up, you can be impacted by the fact that maybe you didn't have a lot of stuff. Maybe you didn't have a lot of money. And so you become very worried about surrounding yourself with stuff to make up for the fact that you didn't have it when you were younger. So it is a very complex thing, but it's just really, really important to understand and explore whether there might be unresolved grief that's part of what's holding you back. And there's unresolved grief when you're struggling to talk about something or someone, or you start off talking and then you get emotional or fearful, or you've got feelings of regret, constant feelings of sadness, sometimes feelings of resentment, unforgiveness, anger. That can all kind of point to the fact that there might be stuff that you need to deal with. Now, some clients have kind of given me some really interesting insights about how they deal with it. I mean, one person said to me, I thought it's fascinating. She said, it's like I've put all my feelings of grief into a box and I've put it on a high shelf. and I'm trying to get on with my life as if it's not there. But out of the corner of my eye, I'm always aware that it's there, it's waiting to be dealt with, and it just feels like there's going to be an overwhelming amount of pain. So often we say that people start to form all sorts of behaviors to distract themselves from what's really causing the grief. And they might get into what we call short-term energy relieving behaviors, where they start drinking more or eating more or binge watching things, or all sorts of things that they'll get into. And the thing is, those things make you feel different, so you think you feel better, but as we say, they are short term, and then when the effect wears off, you're back with your unresolved feelings that need to be taken care of. I think the saddest thing is that we just don't get taught about loss. We learn how to acquire things, but we don't learn how to let go of things. And we all know we're going to die, but we live in denial. We live as if we're going to live forever. And and as if things, whatever's happening, this relationship's going to last forever. This thing is going to be here with me forever. So when things change, we're not equipped, we're not prepared. And so we can fall into listening to all kinds of platitudes and myths that can keep us stuck. So my mum died when I was 13, and I got told, oh, you've got to be strong for your brothers and sisters. So I spent my life being strong for my brothers and sisters and not really dealing with my grief. And then when your energy is caught up with trying to suppress all those emotions, you don't have a lot to really be concerned about your environment or know what to do. Many of those hoarder programs, I love watching them because I think, how can somebody get into this? Because I am a bit of a hoarder, so I watch those as a warning to myself of not to go down that road. But often there is unresolved grief that's at the base of it.
Awesome. That's one of the areas that I think is a pet peeve for me, which is what brought me to you in the first place. And that's we need to talk about it more. I had this conversation also with Okechukwu. I've had the conversation with Kenan as well, which is also what brought me to her. And like you say, when you find yourself in situations where, you're unable to complete a conversation about something without an angst that rises up, and then you've trained yourself over the years to just stifle it, to keep it, put a lid on that, and there's something that happens to us in my part of the world where I originally come from, in Nigeria, where we're told, we hear these things all the time. Are you the first? You're not the first person it's happening to. But like speaking to Kenan, what occurred to me is, yes, I may not be, but I'm not better than you. I'm just different from you. And the fact that you can deal with it in this way, I can't. So allow me the space I need to breathe and develop without judging me as less than for not being able, which is, like Kenan said, when I heard her story, Kenan, to tell us a bit about that. You were diagnosed at age, was it, you were 40 or 44?
44, so a couple of years ago. So I got diagnosed after my son got diagnosed. That was he was diagnosed about 4 years ago. But I always, as a mum, I knew there was something from when he was a toddler, so it's a really long time to get to an official diagnosis. But during the time of researching and waiting and kind of looking for the answer, I realized myself anyway that I was different, and I realized that my brain was wired differently, and that's why my behavior was the way it was, and that's why I experienced anxiety, social anxiety, sensitivity, things like perfectionism. I experienced all those things when I was a child. And so because I was also doing a lot of self-reflection through yoga and mindfulness and meditation, I came to the realization way before I got my diagnosis. but the diagnosis was kind of to make it official so that other people would not question me, because I'd always been questioned about my son. No one thought, you know, everyone thought I was just imagining things, or no, he's fine. Are you sure? You know, so you're constantly doubting you. They're doubting, everyone's doubting you, from GPs to teachers, even professionals. So you know, it meant I had to trust my instincts, and if I hadn't, it would have taken a lot longer to get to where we are now. So yeah, the self-awareness and the self-acceptance came first. So if people are wondering, I don't think they have to get like an official diagnosis. If they recognize traits in themselves, I think that's really valid. But obviously, an official diagnosis is quite helpful for things like if someone wants to be at 100% certain from a professional medical perspective, they might want to use it for work. They might want to use it for, general medical type of stuff. But yeah, it gives them that validation. And actually, there's also, as Gulam, talking about grief, there's definitely a period of grief and loss. You know, losing who you thought you were going to be, or who you thought your child was going to be, the future that they were going to have. You definitely go through a period of grieving and loss of what you believed you were going to have. But then, you hopefully most people come out the other side and they create this new vision, this new future for themselves, and that's the important bit. But yeah,
I think the thing that I got out of hearing your story, Kenan, was that leading up to that point, before the diagnosis, which is just for you to get that confirmation that I know I'm not mad. I saw what I saw, but now you guys can see it, because we're in an era and a civilization where, of course, the piece of paper dictates things, where you have to go through certain it's the culture, it's education, and it's beautiful because it gives us confidence that what we are hearing has been backed up by science, by something or higher authority that has studied it, because none of us knows the entirety of any of the solutions that are being provided. We only know what concerns us. But when you go for a diagnosis and you're diagnosed with specific things, like what you've gone through with your kid, your son, as well as yourself, you just come into a space where you can say, finally. So to say yes and no. You know what to say yes or no to. From the onset, if this is going to be, if you're going to be able to give 100% to whatever you were being invited to or not, because you know what you're capable of, and you know what your capacity is. So in terms of dealing with clients, let me bring it back to our topic. In terms of dealing with clients, how do we then handle? Okay, let me use one of my experiences. I've had a client who was she's given me permission to share this experience, but I'm not going to mention names for, So, but, she's having issues in her marriage, and she broke out severely, hives and rashes, and she couldn't tell what. So she kept trying all sorts of, remedies, face wash, face peel, this and that. But the internal part of her, which was her relationship with her husband, that was falling apart, and she didn't know what to do about it, was showing up in her environment. So there was some hoarding. There was even total disorganization. And then how I was brought in was because they wanted to manage their space. They wanted to remodel. And she said she needed to do a kitchen extension, because she thought, now I need more space for. And, going there and seeing the space and looking at her, dark circles, I was like, and I saw the pictures on the wall. I said, something isn't adding up here. This person is not too old from this person I'm looking at. But the face, their features, and what I see, it's totally, there's something not right. And, just getting to a place of a little, having a bit more confidence in me and trust, she was able to share a bit of her issues. By the time I started to check out the kitchen and find that a lot of the boxes were empty, there was nothing in them. Why are you keeping the box? Why, you know, oh no, I have these cups just in case. Your kids are not even married yet, but they are too old to use plastic cups. But so you're keeping it for grandchildren that you don't know you will have. I mean, so all of those things triggered, for me, it was a trigger. And these are the signs that we see when we know there's something going on that's more than just the space. And that's the scenario where I would call someone like a Kenan or a Gulam to say, I have a client and she needs help, because I'm not trained to I can only handle the spiritual aspects of things, which is my orientation, to pray with someone, to guide them through meditations and just, you know, speak to you and get the confidence I need for you to be able to let me help you. You have to, what you haven't spoken about, nobody has heard. And until you're able to share where your pain point is, you can't get the help that you need. But I understand if there's no trust, people will shut down. They won't be able to share. Needless to say, we didn't need a kitchen extension. We needed a beautiful declutter and a lovely home organizing system that helped both of them. And she got some skincare to boot so that she could, and some advice: drink a lot of water, sleep a bit earlier. Yes, the problems may never be resolved, but at least you will be working on yourself, because it all starts with you. If we go into the aircrafts and they tell us, put on your oxygen mask first before you can help someone else. But you're trying to change the other person in the marriage, and you are going down the drain, and it's rubbing off on both of you, because now the house is untidy. And the husband comes home, he's irritated. Why are these things all over the place? But he's dumping his own stuff too. And it's downhill from there. So what would you, so, I mean, I don't know, Kechiku, if you've ever had to deal with a client where their mind is affecting the space and the work you need to do for them.
Yes, it's always the case. The beautiful thing about architecture, if you practice it the way you should, is every client is special. Every client is unique. No two clients have the same needs. In fact, I tell clients that I've had projects that were identical or typical units, a series of units, 30, 40 units from the same drawing, and each of those units were different. Every single unit had something different, even if we used the exact same drawing. So you get to unit one, and unit one has a door that's, say, half a foot off the wall. And just because the guy building unit two doesn't have the right measuring instrument, he makes his own door a foot off the wall. Now, it doesn't affect the internal space in any way. But if you go in with your measuring tape and measure every detail, you find out that every single detail is slightly different. Nothing sits perfectly. But looking at it holistically, you walk in and yes, there's a door, yes, there's a window, yes, there are tiles on the floor, yes, there's a bathroom, yes, there's a dining and a kitchen. But are all these spaces exactly how they were in the drawing? Absolutely not. So even inanimate stuff like buildings have a life of their own. Even buildings that ought to be the same are different when you look deep in them. You know, look deep into the detail of it. They're all different. Talk more of human beings who are dynamic and, you know, all vector quantities. We move from one place to the other and change. Now, speaking about clients also who, why I say clients are specialists, I had a client once who came to my office very upset. He came to deliver a brief because he was going to make a change in his life. He was going to show his wife that he was the man, and some things will be different now. And what got me was when he said he wanted 2 staircases, one going to his wife's section, another one going to his section in the same house. And this house was no bigger than, 200-300 feet in area. And you walk into the front door and you see 2 staircases. And I say, so I open this front door and one goes to the left and the other to the right. Why? He says, he doesn't want his wife to, if he doesn't want his wife using his own staircase. I'm like, why do you have to live in the same house? I'm just asking, it's possible that divorce will be too expensive. So you know what? I probably just stay here, but do not walk through my staircase and I won't go through yours. I thought he was joking, but he insisted. Now I saw, it's done when you have ornamental staircases that start at one point and end up at the same point. I showed him, I said, listen, you may need to increase the size of your land and your space so you can get the full value of what you're trying to achieve. Because if we do it with the space you have, you will look like there's something wrong with you, basically, up in the head. And we had that conversation. Long story short, he agreed to do one staircase. I sold the idea of having his wife's room far, far, far down one hall on one side, and his bedroom at the other extreme, and many other spaces in between them. So by the time you've gone through all those spaces, surely you can't be lost enough to find yourself in your wife's room or the husband's room. It was a sad reality for me because I couldn't understand how 2 people who live in the same house and not want to see each other. That was the concept of the design. It was tragic, but I had to do it. And it taught me some things. It got me thinking that sometimes people come to you with a concept, just like William said, with a concept born out of an unresolved grief or unresolved issue that, or even happiness, extra excitement. I went to a friend's house and I saw something that looked like this. I want that. I want exactly that. But you don't know why the friend had that. You don't know why this person did what he did. It could have been to compensate for something. It could be to provide a solution for something else. So yes, every client is different. And I try to speak to every member of the family who's going to use the space. Because one of my latest projects, the client said his son's bedrooms have to be blue. And I said, that's very cliche because boys' room blue, girls' room pink. Did you ask your kids if they wanted that? And he said, no, he believes that's what they want. And by the time I asked his daughter, she said she wanted her room gray. And the boy said he wanted his room yellow. And I told him, and he was like, oh, okay. So we have to, just like we've all said, the individual has to be reached in the mind, in the head, and taken through the process. And we can't afford to be lazy in the head whilst doing that, because every detail we miss out ends up being either an enabler or elaborates an issue that the person is probably trying to suppress or even do without. And like we talked about the empty boxes. My dad, God rest his soul, always said we should learn to compartmentalize stuff. Now, compartmentalize not because you want to forget it, but because you want to access it when you feel like accessing it, acknowledging that it's there, but using your own control strengths to open it up and address them in your own time. So it gives you a bit of control if you can, and if you can't, then pray to forget it. So I think, which is why we have some rooms in our houses that we rarely access. especially stores or box rooms. You only go to your box room when you want to travel and you do some boxes. And those box rooms are placed somewhere in the house where nobody sees them except you show them, okay, the box room is down the hall, under the staircase somewhere, or the guest toilet, which is not supposed to be the first thing you see when you enter into the house, or your inverter space where your batteries are kept, or your solar panels right on the roof. There's a reason why these things are kept away. And then you have your living room furniture and china and stuff that you can see that are pleasing to the eye. The lovely parts of the house, the open plan kitchens that have the vents and all those things.
Yeah.
So that's basically what it is. I'm happy we've addressed all of these things, and it comes all the way back to me because it's going to help me further ask the vital questions and listen more attentively, especially because most times being an architect, being architects, I have a God complex. The person is speaking, I'm like, okay, I know where you're going, and I'm sketching, I know where you're going. And most times, like, no, I don't quite like this space like this. I want it this other way. I enjoy those conversations, but if we listen more, then we get to address some salient issues. We get to pick out some things, that are the hidden details that the client is either shying away from or afraid to mention or too eager to mention. I must strike a balance somewhere.
Yep, that's exactly why we're speaking about it, because it's important that people recognize that there is help and you don't have to do it alone. And there is no such thing as being embarrassed about your space. If you have a broken foot and you hide it from the doctors, they're not going to be able to put the right cast on it. And then that foot will heal in the way it is broken. And what happens when you've gone beyond the stage where you're at, where the foot got broken? You're not going to be able to do certain things because you didn't set it at that time. It might require it being broken again so that it can be healed finally. And these are the things, these are the concepts, and these are the reasons why we can't, like you said, we can't be lazy about talking. We have to talk about these things. And it's from communication and talking about it and sharing our own authentic stories that allow people to see, oh, Kenan was diagnosed at 44. That has given her peace, that she can do ABC, and she's a declutterer, and she's an organizer, and she's living a full, you know what? I can. Well, let me call Kenan and see how can she help me. Oh, Gulam she experienced grief? Oh my goodness, yeah. Oh, okay, Chuku did. It's your stories, our authentic stories that help other people see that it is possible to also get help. And it's not that you're saying because you got help or you've overcome it. And I know that none of you did it on your own. You got help too. And so now you're helping people. And there's this thing that a lot of people carry, well, I can do it by myself. No, we're not meant to do it by ourselves. We're built for community. That's why we're human beings, you're not doing life alone. You're being who you are called to be with the help of those around you. And so that we can tie this into our own personal, journeys and how we came into this space. We don't have too much time left. I'm going to be very brief. I have unresolved childhood trauma. Gulam is aware of this because I've spoken to her. My brother has heard a bit of it, but some things might come as a shock. I'm not saying too much, but I'm only just saying, like, I lost a sister at age 7 and never got to know where she was buried. And I can't tell you the date as we speak. So as a child, it's assumed that you don't know enough, but the emotion of that child who knew that I had this person with me, and all of a sudden this person is gone. You find yourself, or I found myself being extra about my environment, about things, because that's how I think. So I would never, if a room seems like nobody has gone in it for a while, I'm going to go in that room. I'm going to clean it out. And I could take days just cleaning out the house. That's just me trying to unclutter my mind. And it usually comes about when I have experienced something that hurts me. And I don't take it outwards. I implode. I'm one of those ones that come back inside. And then it causes me to isolate myself from people. And that's not because they did anything to me, but that's because that's my own coping mechanism, because that's what happened to me as a child. So at a point, my emotional development stopped at age 7. But with diagnosis and coming to this point where of understanding and recognizing what had happened, I'm able to turn that around and help someone else. To recognize when someone else is exhibiting certain tendencies and symptoms, to say, yeah, I see what's going on here. And I may not have the right help for you, but I can share my story that allows the person seek the help that they need, or introduce them to someone who can help them, because we know that it will keep showing up. And how did I get to this point? My dad passed. 1 year on, I am feeling like the world is coming to an end. And I got to a point where I said, nah, this can't be about my dad, because I had a good relationship with my dad. I don't think there is much I wanted to do with him that I didn't do. Really, I actually had to sit down and take stock. Financially, emotionally, what is it I wanted to do with my dad that I feel was unresolved? I couldn't find any. And that's when the journey began. Like, so what's the problem? We have to find the problem. And I have self-medicated for so long that all the other areas of my life, my spiritual intelligence, my, leadership, all of those were growing and covering up for the emotional part that wasn't growing. And so I end up making some ridiculous decisions that if my emotions were not that childish, I probably wouldn't have. And these are things that people need to understand will happen. It will show up in your later years. So whatever wherever we do find ourselves, it's important that we find the help that we need, because it's there. And speak about what you're going through, because only when you talk about it that you can actually find the help. Somebody will reach out to you. Kenan did the same. Golem did the same. Okechukwu is working. This is his job on a daily basis. We had a family conversation earlier today, you guys, and it got to a point. I'm the older one. I agree. But it got to a point where I said to him, I said, listen, you are graced with a certain level of eloquence and demeanor to handle these kind of things. I don't have the maturity. I'm not there yet. I may have the vocabulary. I might have the oratorial skills to be able to hold a room, but I promise you, I can't handle certain things yet. I'm not there. My emotions are still, maybe now they're 9 years, we've reached 9 years old, we're getting there, but they're not anywhere close. So I'm not even going to attempt, but that only came because I've started to have the conversation to be able to recognize that this is what's happening with me, so that I don't keep making those same decisions that bleed over people who didn't cause me the harm in the first place. And half of them they're no longer alive. So I'm not going to die because they're dead. I need to live, and there are other people who will benefit from my experiences, which is what both of you are also doing. And I'm so glad that we're able to come on and have this particular first conversation, because we're definitely going to delve into specificity. I'm hoping that we will have quite a few people who are saying, you know what, that resonates with me. I think I need to speak to someone. I think I need to find out if perhaps there's some neurodiverse part of me that I did not realize. It's for Kenan, it was like fitting a square peg in a round hole all your life growing up, and not being able to explain to people that that's just not what I feel. That's just not what I'm thinking. You're getting it wrong, and hearing you and listening is one of the things that, some of us don't do well. And that stems also from where we're coming from. And I think it's important that we learn how to listen. It's our job now. That's what we do for a living, listen to people and help them. Kenan is a beautiful organizer. She can organize your mind into compartments that you never knew existed. I promise you. and get in touch with yourself, which is, you can't love anyone if you don't love yourself. That's the truth. You have to start from there. And Gulam is a professional at, I don't even know if it's the softness of her voice or, but she can just make you start telling her things. And then you're asking yourself, I've never told anybody that. Why am I speaking about that now? But those are the things that you need to do to get yourself into that space where you can come to acceptance, where you can come to awareness, because it's the first step. Like, I mean, okay, Chiku, you would agree. Before you build a house, you have to have a foundation. You can't put any blocks on without a foundation. And so these women have dedicated themselves to creating the foundations that allow us to build our lives onto this foundation of recognition and understanding of who we are, of clearing the stress that the grief. I mean, I was blown out of my mind when I heard 40, the 40. Gulam, what was it you said? Just refresh us. I want everyone to refresh us with everything that we can. You're mute.
Yes, I can hear some. It's gone now.
I've gone, yeah.
Yeah, the feedback. Yeah, over 40 life events where something comes to an end or there's a change in a familiar pattern of behavior. And the important thing to realize is that people often talk about the 5 stages of grief, but the Grief Recovery Institute have actually discovered that that's not a helpful model, because that model was designed by studying people who were dying and had been given the news of terminal illness. And actually, each person's grief journey is really unique. And you've said a lot about individuals and individuality and listening to the individual, that each person's grief journey is very, very different. So sometimes people think they're being helpful by saying, oh, if I were you, I would do X, or this helped me. But actually, the most important and useful thing you can do is to be what we call a heart with ears, where you're really able to listen without analyzing, criticizing, judging, trying to fix things, because actually grief is a normal and natural reaction to dealing with loss. But that's not how it's seen. So we're often told things like, oh, you mustn't cry. You know, you've got to be strong for your brothers and sisters, as in my case. Or sometimes we get told, oh, just give it time. Well, actually, how long would you have to give it if your tire is burst? How long would you sit there waiting for it to reflate itself? No, it's not time. It's the actions over time that are really helpful and will make a change. So I can sit there complaining about my tire is burst, or I can think, can I deal with it? And if the answer is no, get help. So I know I can't deal. I know it sounds silly, but I'm on to the AA straight away. So I would encourage people who are struggling about getting their space sorted, because the space that we're in, it's a vicious circle. You know, if your space is good, it feeds you. You feel safe, you feel nurtured, you feel good. If it's a mess, again, it feeds all the worst thoughts you have about yourself, and why can't I do this, and why is it such a mess, and I'm hopeless, and it can just become a downward spiral. So I would really encourage anyone listening to this, you don't have to suffer in silence, because often people think the thing to do is to withdraw, be isolated, keep it to yourself. You don't want to trouble other people. But nothing will change unless you're courageous and willing to take steps that you might not normally. You will stay sitting in that mess, but there is so much help available.
Thank you so much. That's what we needed to hear. And for Kenan, what would you say? Someone put in the quote in the. Someone put question and says to Kenan, what steps are steps to follow when you want to start to declutter your life? I would advise not to. It wouldn't be a one. It's not a one. It's not a one size fits all type of thing. It would have to be determined by your personal circumstances. But I know that there are generic ways. For instance, if someone might reach you and get a what's that, how do you put it, like a the first step would be to do a discovery call, I believe, to see if there's what the situation is, what the issues are, and then you would know if it's a decluttering that you need, or if what exactly this, or if it's just an organizing that you need, or if you need a full overhaul, or that will be determined on a discovery call. Because sometimes when people hear declutter, they think it's throwing things away. It's not necessarily throwing things away. They're just various ways. It depends on the person who is requiring a service, and which is why I always advise, speak to the person whom you've resonated with, who you think can help for what it is that you need. And if that's not what you need, they would be in the best position to advise and say, you know what, I will put you in touch with A, B, or C. We've come to a point where our synergies are such that we know that there's no one person taking any one person's client or any. It's none of that. We're here for holistic well-being of individuals. And sometimes the help may not be me, but I'm the contact that the person has. And so I would direct that person, refer the person, and because the person is being referred by me, Kenan knows that there's a certain level I have gotten to that would not be, so she's not spending time dealing with something when she could be helping someone who truly needs her. So it's important that we get these things right and understand that decluttering is a science, yes. It's a skill, yes. There are methods to it, yes, but it differs from person to person. And I mean, in the case of my client who wanted a decluttering, or rather who wanted an extension and ended up getting a decluttering service, saving herself almost £20,000. That's how it works. I mean, I could have given her an extension, put money in my pocket, but how peaceful would I be with that money in my pocket, knowing that that person is not what they needed and that they would still be stuck with the problem that they had, and I haven't solved anything by giving her an extension, but increase my portfolio. I mean, we have a lot of that too. So at the end of the day, what's more important is establishing awareness of who you are, where you are, and how you can get help to go where you want to go. That's what's more important for us. So I don't know, Kenan, do you want to say two, 3 sentences that we can? I have all the details at the end anyway, so just to whoever is listening.
Yeah, well, I think the first step is you just got to assess where you are right now, and you got to look at it from a kind of broad perspective, looking at all the key areas of your life. So whether it's relationships, your home, your finances, the amount of joy you have in your life, your physical health. So it's taking a broad picture, and there is a coaching tool called a Wheel of Life. So you can contact me to get hold of one. But it's basically, you look at this and assess where you are right now, and you can rate where you think you are, how happy, how satisfied you are with it on a scale of like 0 to 10. And that gives you a good picture of where you are very clearly. And then that allows you to see where your lowest score is. And so that would normally be the one that you work on first, because that would have the biggest impact.
Yeah.
And you're trying to create a wheel so that everything's in balance, rather than necessarily try to get a 10 out of 10 on everything. So that would be where I would start. Awesome.
That is perfect. Beautiful. Okay, Chuku, if somebody said that their house is perfect, but they've outgrown the space, what would be your advice to them? Just an overview in maybe a minute or so we can wrap up.
Well, change is constant. Um, if you live in a family house where you had a room to yourself at age 5, certainly by the time you're 15 or 20, you would want that space to change. And times would have changed, science would have changed, tech would have changed. So change is what's expected. I would have a problem with a client who doesn't want to change. Um, yeah, even if you get to, so what I'm doing, for instance, yesterday I got a call from a friend whose house I did, um, and his neighbor had decided to change his jacuzzi to a shower. Now you see, a lot of people when they were building their houses had this grand feeling that I'll have to have, I want a whirlpool in my bathroom so I can soak over time. But you get to a stage where you can't even climb into the whirlpool anymore. So you just want to walk into a shower cubicle, have your shower. The shower can be designed in such a way that you have a seat or something where you could, sit and have a shower, which is what I'm having to do now. So the era for the whirlpool or jacuzzi is over. So I advise my clients, do not be afraid to change stuff. You know, Most times the cost or the expense is where the issue is. But what we try to do is work with what you have as much as possible so you don't have to replace stuff. You can just move stuff around. And before you know it, it looks much better than you ever thought. And if you need to go out there and get something, then the need will arise. It will be obvious that, yes, we need to go get something new. Otherwise, just recover it. I mean, you could recover your seats from one color to the other. You could move a dining table from a longitudinal orientation to a horizontal or a lateral orientation. You could move your couch to the window. You could change one color on the wall. You know, arrange your wardrobe, your clothes according to color, and your shoes more visible, all in the same space, and it starts to look like new. So yeah, that's basically what it is. It's not always chisel, bulldoze, break down the roof, you know, and all of those heavy liftings. So yeah, that's basically what it is.
Thank you so much. I want to also thank everybody who has watched today, and I hope that this has been helpful. These are just these are conversations that cannot be done justice in just an hour, even if we were to talk about it. As we have found out, each of us on this call has had conversations and communication with each other. We can be here till tomorrow talking about this. It's a pet peeve for each one of us, and we really, really want to see people do well. We want to see people get better. We want to see people thrive in their spaces, in their lives, and just knowing that we have been helped by reaching out for help is why we preach that seek the help that is required. Doing it by yourself, it only goes so far. A surgeon doesn't go through medical school just so he can operate on himself. Your gifts are not for you. Your gifts are meant to serve others. So we must also recognize that as we serve others, there will be people who serve us too, and seek the help that we need for whatever areas in our lives that we're not thriving in. And as everyone has said, I would echo it. It comes and it starts with self-awareness, knowing where you're at. And sometimes you need help to find out where you are, because you've got blocks and you've put them in compartments that you're unable to unlid without help. And that has been my own personal experience. And so thank you, every single one, for joining us today. Thank you, Gulam. Thank you, Kenan. Thank you, Okechukwu. I have been helped by listening myself. I've had a lot of, it's beautiful. I will never be tired of hearing how I can be helped and how I can help others. So someone, Jenny Song says, I've been so inspired and so blessed I joined. Thank you so much for joining. Bukola Thomas also has asked questions, and Ibinabo Enebi. By the way, I met Ibinabo I met Gulam on Ibinabo's channel when she interviewed her. Thank you, Ibinabo, for joining us as well today and for your wonderful comments. We truly appreciate it. Uloma Harrington. I can't mention everybody, but thank you everyone for joining us. Thank you for just share this video. Someone might be helped, someone might need the help. Anyone you know who's struggling with, just any signs that are a little bit compulsive, might be that they need a little bit of assistance and organizing to get themselves, back on track. It helps. So thank you guys for coming. If you can just wait for a second and I will be on the chat with you. So for our viewers, thank you so much. We truly appreciate you, and we look forward to seeing you on the next Siblings in Design in June. We will communicate the date, but for now, it's thank you from all of us.